Welcome to the Android Police Podcast. I'm Ryan Whitwam.
I'm Cody Toombs.
And I'm Corbin Davenport.
And this week, Samsung announced a new phone. So we're going to talk about that. You might have heard about it. It's the Note 10. Actually, there are two of them. There's the Note 10 and the Note 10 Plus. So first time that Samsung has sort of replicated their Galaxy S strategy with the Notes.
Yeah, so this was... a lot of people had the impression that this wasn't the most exciting Note in a long time. So what's new about it, Ryan? Can you tell us what's new? Because I haven't read this yet.
Good job preparing.
There's been much enthusiasm about this phone. You can tell.
So
because
as you
we
may have
all
noticed,
care.
it's the number is one higher, so it's the Note 10 instead of the Note 9. That's I think. No, so well,
one of them
like
also has a mathematical symbol appended to the end of it.
Right. Yeah. So they have the hole punch camera again, but there's just one camera, and the hole in the display is much smaller. Samsung says, and it's in the middle, which is, I mean, essentially at this point it's a notch. I don't know why. I don't know why they were so opposed to the notches. It's dysfunctionally identical to having like a water drop notch. So there are two versions of the phone, as we said. The smaller one is a 6.3 inch screen, and the large one is a 6.8. But the smaller phone, it's only 1080p, and then the larger one is 1440p, which is I was a little surprised about that, because 6.3 inches is still pretty big. You know, I don't know why they wouldn't have like the higher res display on that.
Yeah, well, that's kind of one of those areas, sort of like obscene amounts of internal storage, where I'm probably not going to ever take advantage of it or maybe even notice it. But when you're paying $900 for a phone, it probably should have every single bell and whistle imaginable.
It's great that is such a foreboding comment, or foreshadowing comment for what's coming later.
Yeah.
But
so the small Note, 8 gigs of RAM, which is plenty. The large one has 12 gigs, which is fundamentally unnecessary on Android. And let's see.
Unless you're Artem.
Right, unless you're Artem.
Yeah.
It's still the in-display fingerprint sensor. The power button is on the left for some bizarre reason. I don't understand. Let's see. Oh, so you can get up to 45-watt charging, but only on the Note 10 Plus, and you have to buy a third-party charger. The one that comes with it only does 25 watts.
Wait, is it third-party or just a different charger from Samsung?
I imagine Samsung might sell one, but okay. I mean, it's USB power delivery, so you just need one that'll do 45 watts.
I was going to say, it'd be really weird if Samsung wasn't selling a charger for its own fast charging.
Yeah. And then, no headphone jack. This is the first Samsung phone to just get with the times, I guess.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people come. I don't know. I find the micro SD card griping a little weird. When doesn't the base model come with 128 gigs of storage?
It does.
That's.
I mean, for me, that's plenty.
Yeah.
But yeah, the small Note doesn't have a micro SD card.
I know there are, some use cases, especially people that just like to have their entire music library offline. But I don't think a lot of people will notice.
Yeah, it's a niche sort of thing when you're talking about a phone that you can get with 0.5 terabyte of storage. Or I don't know if you can get the 512 in the small Note, but I think you can at least get 256 if you want. But
and especially when micro SD cards could even slow down the phone. If you try to put apps on it, they'll run worse than on internal storage.
Yep, that is true. Okay, the Note 10 is 256 gigs of storage. Base.
Okay.
All right.
At least according to Samsung's website, which is that's plenty. But if you want 512, you have to get the 10 Plus.
Did we mention no headphone jack already?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which really, and we said this during the Q&A too, the writing was kind of on the wall. Samsung was eventually going to make this jump.
I mean, everybody is doing this, and I know it's a big phone, but I mean, Samsung announced a tablet that doesn't have a headphone jack either. So I mean, it's not
so
just,
dumb.
It's no longer just about space saving. It's more like everybody has realized like you can
Yeah.
get away with not having one, and it's just it's like one less thing to have to worry about waterproofing. It's it's simplifies the design process, and people will put up with it. People will use Bluetooth, they'll use USB-C. Yeah, I mean, I would like if we could still have headphone jacks, but I think that that boat has sailed long ago.
Yeah, and I was one of my friends on Twitter made a joke like, now Samsung was now there's no major phone companies still putting headphone jacks on their major phones, and I just replied LG, and he said major Corbin major. I was like, oh,
Mhm.
Well, at this
LG
point, kind of
burns.
true.
Yeah, I bet they play that up this year.
Yeah, they'll do what Samsung did last year, and they'll make all
Yep.
those commercials making fun of other companies, and then the next year they'll conveniently delete those.
Yeah,
Gotta get rid of the incriminating evidence.
yeah, look, it's one of those things. Everyone else has done it. Samsung's not gonna. Samsung's fine holding out, but they're not gonna like waste money
Yeah.
if they can avoid it.
Yeah, I mean, I maintain it's still dumb. There's still not really a reason to do it. There's plenty of waterproof phones with headphone jacks, but I mean, I use AirPods like 99% of the time, so it's not a big deal for me on phones. So whatever.
So because these are Note phones, they also have S Pens inside. That's like why it's a Note and not just another Galaxy S. So this year Samsung it still has Bluetooth like they added last year, but now the S Pen will also have an accelerometer and a gyroscope. So it's sort of aware of its location and its orientation in the same way that your phone is. And Samsung's use case for that is not super compelling. You basically you can do like little like swipe gestures with the pen. Like you can in the in YouTube you can like skip forward and back and change the volume, and then in what was the other thing they showed that it does? It was oh, the camera, right? Yes, the camera. So yeah, that's the like. So you still have like the button control for the shutter, but you can switch between modes and you can zoom in and out with the S Pen. Which I mean, okay, there's an SDK so developers can like add S Pen gestures to apps. I don't think many of them will.
No.
Yeah,
So
it's a thing.
I'm just curious when they had this in development, did they call it Harry Potter mode? Like, is there like a secret? If you just yell like Lumos, maybe the light will turn on.
Oh, they should add that.
This
I
is
mean,
definitely a thing that should
now
happen.
I'm hoping that somebody is making an app like that. I think that would be pretty funny.
If they showed that on stage, it might have been a tolerable presentation.
I mean, they might have gotten sued for it, but at the same time, it would have been
No,
the best selling point for the
they
phone.
could have done some cross promotion with
Yeah.
the new Harry Potter mobile game.
It's like they're willing to license anything.
Yeah.
You could get a Harry Potter edition of the phone where the S Pen looks like a wand.
I'd buy it. Oh goodness.
So yeah, so that's the Note 10, the Note 10 Plus. So the smaller one starts at what is it? Is it $950?
Yes, for the next
and
2
then
weeks, and then it'll go on sale for several $100s off.
And it's
Yeah.
$1,100 for the larger phone, which is
Oof.
Well,
substantial.
when your starting price is $950 for quote the small one, that's just
So-
rough.
So I mean, if you think you're gonna buy a Note 10 though, I think buying it at launch is a good idea if you have a good trade-in, because Samsung is offering like $600 for a Pixel 3 or a Note 9 or a Galaxy S10. So that's
Yeah.
pretty good. That's probably more than you could sell those phones for right now.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, it is a Samsung trade-in. So
Yeah.
maybe 6 months from now, we'll start getting lots of horror stories where people didn't get their refunds. But at least now it seems like it's good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, is anything else we want to say about the Note 10?
Nope, it's
Not
a Note.
terribly. Yeah, I hate to say it. Like what a lot of people have been saying is this is pretty much just like an iteration year, and in some ways like they're walking specs downward as opposed to like improving them. So
Yeah. Well, they're upselling certain things.
Yeah.
Like, if you want a micro SD card and a high res screen, you have to pay $200 more. So not exciting times, but some people like the Note phones. That's fine. You guys go crazy. You buy the new Note phones and wave your styluses around for the Harry Potter game.
Yeah. All right. So now is the time when we shill. So you might be watching this podcast on Twitch right now, and if you're not, you can watch it live on twitch.tv/Android Police. We record it every week, and there's another show. There's a Q&A where Cody and Corbin just answer your questions, presumably well. I don't usually watch it. But yeah, so you can do that, and if you are an Amazon Prime member, you can subscribe to the podcast for free. It costs you no additional money, but it gives us money. We get Amazon money for it, and that helps us keep doing the show. So we have instructions on the Twitch page about how you can link your Amazon account to Twitch. It's quick and easy, and then you just click a button, and we get money. It's magic, basically, internet magic. And you do still have to renew that every month. So just come back and click the button again. That's all you have to do. It's 10 seconds of your time, and and we get money. It's pretty cool. And if you do this during the show, a Pixel 3 XL notch will slide down over the top of the screen with your name on it, and we will also probably say something about you on the show because we see in the chat when people subscribe. Probably a nice thing. I can't promise that, but
we'll do our best.
Hopefully. Yeah.
It helps if you don't have like a username that's mildly offensive.
Yeah, don't do that. I mean, we'll probably just kick you out anyway if you do that. So.
Okay.
I mean, not before we laugh about it a little bit.
Yeah. But, not before we take your money.
Yeah.
That too.
All right. So speaking of pixels and notches and pixels without notches, new Pixel 4 rumor things happened this week. So there's another leak. This one focused more on the spec side of the new Pixels. So as we have assumed for a long time, there's a Pixel 4 and a Pixel 4 XL. The Pixel 4 is apparently going to be 5.7-inch 1080p display. The XL will be a 6.3-inch 1440p display. So those are pretty close to the current Pixel sizes.
Yeah.
More interesting though, I think, is the refresh rate. Apparently, it's going to be a 90 hertz display.
Yeah, which pretty much anybody who has a higher refresh rate display has sung the praises of it. So for anyone who falls into that camp, you'll probably be pretty happy about that. I haven't used one myself, so no opinion.
Yeah, I saw Ryan's OnePlus 7 Pro at I/O. It was pretty cool. And this will also be one of the few phones. Again, there's few phones that have this at all, but even out of those, not all of them are OLED, and these will be OLED 75 hertz.
So yeah, the OnePlus 7 Pro was the first high refresh rate OLED that I had used, and it is pretty cool. It looks different. Like as soon as you see it, you can tell something is going on. And Google's always really focused on like the smoothness of animations with the Pixel phones. So I feel like it'll really put that high refresh rate screen to good use. And I, on a phone size display, a high refresh rate is cool. Like it looks very nice. It's not like it doesn't ruin you for other phones. Like you might think at first, like, oh, there's no way I can go back to a 60 hertz display. And it is kind of weird for a little bit after you like start using a different phone, but after a couple of hours, you don't notice it so much. So it's not like, a watershed moment for phones and you'll never ever want to buy another 60 hertz display phone. I mean, I'm not convinced that, high refresh rates are going to be a thing everywhere because they do use more power. So, enjoy it. It looks cool, but just don't expect this will change the way you use your phone.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, and forgive me, I'm actually about to say something that is obviously not true, but is the Pixel 4 going to be the first air quote mainstream phone that will have a higher refresh rate?
I believe so.
I mean,
So
OnePlus is
the
kind of
current
coming close to mainstream, but
the current iPhones don't have a high refresh rate screen, but I think some of the iPads
yeah,
do.
one
Right?
of
The
at
iPad
least
Pros.
The
yeah,
Pro does, yeah.
at least one Pro.
Yeah, so people might be sort of aware of what this looks like. I mean, there are a lot of like desktop monitors now that are high refresh rate. A lot of like like gaming branded stuff. Like G-Sync and whatever the AMD version of it is.
FreeSync.
That's FreeSync. Yeah, that's pretty common these days. But you notice that more on like a big display, I think.
So
So let's
also
see.
interesting in this is the battery is changing size a little bit.
Yeah, so the big one gets bigger and the small one gets smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah, last year the small one was the one to get. I'm thinking this year that the small one might have a lot of issues.
So I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's not a dramatic difference. It'll depend on on optimization. I think it's interesting this year. From what we can tell, the phones will look very similar to one another, just different sizes. So kind of like the first gen Pixels, how they were just sort of different sizes of the same thing. There's going to be apparently 6 gigs of RAM this time, so that should hopefully alleviate the memory management issues that we experienced on the Pixel 3. Although I feel like I never had them as bad as other people. The only thing that really was a problem for me is taking pictures with the camera would like kill the background processes. But not usually. Not like I've never had like music stop playing. I know some people still have that happening. That has not been a thing for me.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. It's always been pretty good for me.
Yeah, it's like after I take pictures, I would like go back to the app I was just using, and it would like refresh, which is annoying, but it's not a deal breaker or anything. But I know a lot of people had more problems than me, so they will be happy to know that 6 gigs of RAM. And then what is
Artem.
there's like
It's
Artem,
just
yeah.
Artem.
Artem was like 12 gigs though. So I'm not sure. The source of this rumor also mentioned a DSLR camera attachment, which I mean they didn't really have any detail on, and I'm not very clear on what that could be.
Yeah, so the very phrasing of it was it's vague enough that I'm doubtful on what they necessarily meant. It's not clear if this is something that fits over the existing cameras. I kind of doubt that just because that would suck. So I'm kind of expecting it maybe to be sort of like what a few companies have put out, which is basically just its own dedicated sensor combined with a lens sitting on top of it. I would assume like a fixed lens, but
I mean, I don't know why Google would do that though. I mean, they've like
because
the
they
Pixels.
currently have a massive mind share of people that just think their camera software is the best, and they might monopolize on
I
that.
mean, I don't know. I feel like Google spent so much time optimizing like smartphone cameras. Like they wouldn't want to be like, here's this other big sensor that we're just going to put on your phone. Like I feel like they would want to do more with the actual camera hardware in the phone. I mean, I wonder if this could maybe be some sort of like their version of the moment lenses or something.
It could be.
Yeah.
I don't like it, and see, this is also where I hate its phrase DSLR like attachment, because to me that speaks probably more than just an add-on lens like a moment lens.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that
I mean, it's so vague. It's hard to know what this could be.
yeah,
That'll-
and
it's
it's hard to tell if the person who's passed this information on would even know necessarily what they're saying. So
and that almost sounds like to me like you would use the Pixel as a viewfinder for a different camera almost.
I mean, that's like that. We just talked about those weirdo Sony lenses a couple weeks ago.
yeah, and that's kind of what I think this is going to be, or
I
what
don't
I'm
know.
hoping it would be.
No, you know what'll be really be is Google announces some Hasselblad camera mods for the Pixel 4.
Oh, you made me cry on the inside a little.
Mods are back, baby.
Gross. Okay. Okay. I think we've hit all the pertinent points of the Pixel there. So we'll talk briefly about the new Android beta that just rolled out, Beta 6, the other day.
The software the Pixel 4 will be shipping with.
Yes. If you're running a device on the beta, check for an update. You probably have this. This is the last beta, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this
So
Google
it's very
said they're
similar to Beta 5. I think the only notable difference is Google still trying to make their gesture stuff work better.
And it's not.
yeah
It's bad.
yeah it's still bad. So again, this is kind of like the release candidate where everything's done. They're just like they said specifically, we're not adding any more features after this point. We're just fixing bugs. So everything is set in stone. If you don't like something about Android Q, well, I don't know what to tell you. But the only major change in this release was they tweaked gesture nav a little bit more. So they're changing the full screen gesture nav, which is something more like the iPhone where you swipe up, and it's not like the bar on the bottom like Pi has. It's full screen, and you go back by swiping from the left side of the screen.
Or the right, either side.
Yeah. So they changed it a little bit. So now apps can basically disable the gestures from the center of the screen or the corners. So like if you're Snapchat and you don't want the phone to go back if you swipe between pages, now they can say
they
this
they
corner is
can only
mine.
do it for 200 dp of
Yeah, we have
screen.
we have a picture. We have actually an embedded tweet in the post if you want to see what it looks like. But it's basically just like a tiny block on the sides and tiny corners that
Yeah, I mean,
the
I think
gestures
like
are disabled on.
I think developers need to like pick where they want those based on like where their app has things touching the edge. So yeah, and there's also this new sensitivity option attached to the gesture nav. And it's very subtle, like how it changes the experience. It basically, if you turn the sensitivity all the way down, it's harder to trigger back. So you can sort of you can you might remember Google added the peak uh, feature before, so you could get to navigation drawers and stuff. So it's easier to trigger that by just sort of pressing near the edge of the screen and then dragging. You're less likely to get the back arrow. And then if you turn sensitivity all the way up, it becomes very easy to trigger back and harder to get like peak. So, and the same is true of like any like UI elements like sliders or whatever that come up near the edge of the screen. So clearly, like this is a problem. See, I don't hate the new gesture nav. I think on balance it is a good change because the 2 button thing was bad in a lot of ways, and this is a much more elegant solution, except for the way they've chosen to implement back. It just there are so many apps that rely on edge gestures, and I feel like it's going to be a long adjustment period while we figure out how this is going to work.
Well, and even Google's own apps are not updated to do this well. When I turned this on, one of the first apps I ended up in was Gmail, and I spent seriously 5 minutes just like watching as basically identical swipes from the edge produce 3 completely different actions.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like we
because
can't come down on Google too hard until this is actual finished software.
Agreed, but at the same time,
they
I
said
mean,
this is finished.
yeah.
But it's not officially out yet. It's still a beta.
And there are certain apps where you got to figure Googlers themselves are using these and testing these. And I have trouble believing that they didn't like call up the Gmail developers and say, "Hey, could you guys like please push a fix on this now?"
They'll get on that right after they implement bundles.
Google should be like leading the way with this. I mean, it would be nice if this were all like updated and working the way it's supposed to work.
And I'm just using Gmail as the example. To be fair, there are, let's ballpark it, 100,000 apps that also aren't updated for this and are going to be generally kind of terrible with this navigation UI.
It just goes back to the point that Android has had the side hamburger menu as a UI staple for the past 5 years or so. And now you have something that's directly interfering with that. Mm-hmm. And it's requiring a lot of hacky workarounds from Google and a lot of hacky workarounds from developers. I
feel like there are better ways to implement gestures that you don't have to interfere with something that is so integral to the way people design apps. OnePlus's gestures are not perfect, but I feel like that's preferable. Like you can swipe up in like the bottom left or right sort of thirds of the screen to get back, and then in the middle is home. So, I mean, at least that doesn't interfere with the way apps work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like in a way they're almost effectively stealing space from apps by doing this. I know that their whole premise is apps can now display more on the screen, because holy crap, they gain back so much by taking away those little buttons at the bottom.
That's really like that's one of the main
The whole
advantages.
60 pixels, Cody.
But the amount that they gain back in
the black
visibility,
the black bar at the bottom of the screen is so ugly. It was time for that to go.
I mean, that's fine. But to be fair, they also did solve that by just making it transparent. But the thing is, the amount of space that they gain back visibly, they've taken away far more than that with the gestures, where you simply can't put touchable targets.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it depends on the app. An app that has, touch targets all over the edge of the screen, yeah, that's a problem. I mean, if apps are updated to take advantage of the exclusion areas, I think most apps will be fine. They'll put those where they have UI elements that you can touch near the edge. But it's like, how long is it going to take everybody to do this?
I haven't tested this yet, but I'm actually really curious how it's going to be for games, because I imagine this must really screw with games that have touch targets.
Yeah, I wonder.
I don't know if a lot of games have swiping from the edges.
Well, near the edge. I mean,
definitely near it.
The thing is that back gesture, you can get pretty far inside the screen and still trigger that.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I wonder what the if that gesture still works. Like if you're in a full screen game that has like the nav bar hidden, do you have to like swipe up to get the nav bar and then swipe to go back?
Ooh, that sounds so bad.
I mean, well, that's not really different than now. Like you can't access the back button.
I know that, but it sounds awkward to have to swipe one way and then like perform a second swipe that's slightly different in order to trigger the actual gesture you want.
Honestly, like I think that like the assistant swipe is the most awkward part of this. Like,
oh, I hate that too.
Making it like from the corner. It's like why are there all these different swipes, Google? Why can't, like?
Well, in the place that I wanted to swipe when I'm trying to swipe back, half the time I was triggering the assistant because I wasn't starting high enough up on the screen when I did my swipe. It's like, this is awkward, and I can't even see what part of the screen is going to trigger this. I know I could figure it out from the little indicators on the lock screen, but that's still not good.
I already didn't like this, and hearing you guys complain is just making me hate it more.
I'm completely clear. Like, I don't hate this. I think on balance, it is going to be a good change. It's just like there's some awkward stuff going on that I don't know if it's
okay. I will go on record as solid hate. No,
I feel like about 6 months after release, it'll be more tolerable. Most of the apps you use on a regular basis that are still maintained will do something to mitigate the weirdness. But it just strikes me as very strange the way Google has gone about this. I mean, they did dumb stuff with navigation last year too. It's like they weren't listening to people. Everybody's like, this is bad. This is not like good to use. And they're like, no, we have focus groups who say this is great. And then here we are a year later. They're like, actually, maybe that wasn't great. Here's this other thing. And everybody's like, well, but maybe this isn't good either.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw it, but they actually just released a blog post, I think in the last couple of hours or something, or maybe it was earlier this morning, that was specifically them talking about how they studied people's usage. And basically, they didn't say focus groups, but that's effectively what they were saying is we had focus groups and people said they liked this thing and it took very little time for them to adjust to it. And
that's
blah, blah, blah.
That's what they said last year too. Like I remember whoever was in charge of or heavily involved with the nav change last year talking about how people were like really into the way you could like drag the pill like way to the side and keep cycling through apps. And like, I understand how people probably thought, oh, that's neat. Like in the focus group, everybody's like, hey, that's really cool. But actually using the phone, I don't think anybody does that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I have used it. I don't think it's very good because I usually don't have that many apps.
Yeah, I mean,
sitting
like
there in the first place.
The quick switch gesture is like
all
I ever released. Like yeah, I don't know. I feel like you can make people say what you want in a focus group if you're really committed to doing something, and that's what Google people are doing right now.
Yeah,
All of their navigation stuff.
So my honest question is going to be like, when this comes out, you know that they're tracking statistics on how many people are using this stuff. I'm really curious if no one is using the gestures, and by no one, obviously, there's some people. I've talked to a few people that really like them, but overall, like, at what point are they going to say, well, we're not really getting the usage we thought we were going to, we're trying again? I have a feeling they're going to take a solid year off before they do that.
I mean,
but I think it's going to happen.
They're bringing the 3 buttons back. You'll be able to do that on the phone now instead of being limited to the 2-button thing. I don't think anybody will use that. I think it'll be either 3-button or gestures.
I actually do use the 2-button thing, but I kind of forced myself to use it because it looked like that's the way they were going.
Yeah.
I strongly dislike the 2-button thing. Every time I use a Pixel right now, I'm like, oh god, this navigation.
Yeah, I only tried it for a couple of days, and then I went back because it was way too difficult.
I never got used to the way you have to drag like 2/3 of the way up the screen to open the app drawer. It is the dumbest thing, but that's less dumb in the new one. Like one of the reasons I think it's better, even though there are problems. But
well, what I hated about the new one is if you don't drag fast enough up the screen, then the task switcher interface comes on, and then unless you take all the way to the top, the app drawer will not open. So you have to either be super fast with it, or you have to like drag all the way. I don't think that's better.
I guess for me, like, I open the app drawer just by like flicking it on most phones, so it's not a big problem for me. But I mean, well, I'm gonna make myself use the gestures when the Pixel 4 comes out, or even when Q rolls out to the Pixel 3 or whatever. I'm gonna try to commit to it and see how it goes. Partially because I just want to know how apps deal with this. I want to be part of the train wreck if it is indeed a train wreck.
I'll give it a try again, but I can genuinely say I think I'm probably going to be back to either 3 or 2 button within, I'm guessing, a couple days.
And 2 other quick things. The new gestures still don't work with third-party launchers. Yeah. And that's not being fixed before release. So presumably we'll have to wait a year before you can use.
Is that a full like system update thing you have to do, or
I would imagine it would have to be, because that's pretty intense. I don't, usually I know Android Q has, it's sort of bundling parts of the system into updates, but usually it's more supplementary stuff like fonts or a network manager or stuff.
Oh, but they have that. They have the mainline thing.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, I haven't seen any mainline stuff that's really integral to the system, like maybe like network stacks and fonts and that kind of thing. I don't know if they'd be able to change that, because also that's something that OEMs are going to change, and that's the other thing, is that I'm sure in the next year we'll see every company change this just enough so switching between phones is very difficult. But
to be fair, it's been kicked around quite a few times. There are a lot of reasons to suspect that they might be doing a 10.1 update, especially including RCS related things that everyone knows are there and are likely coming. And it would be weird if it took them a whole nother year before they started pushing those out. So it wouldn't be weird if a 10.1 hit and it included support for third-party launchers on the gestures, the RCS stuff, and again, a couple of other things.
I almost forgot this was number 10. I feel like Google should name these after big cats, like Apple did with OS 10. We'll have Android Snow Leopard. That'll be fun. We're running out of candy names, so it's only a matter of time.
I mean, there really aren't any Q candy names. If they're gonna stop doing it, this is the year.
I'd like to imagine that the reason it hasn't been announced yet is because they're still racking their brains on what to call it.
I don't know. I want to see them carry it through all the way to Z, just so maybe they'll like bring back the Zagnut bar just for giggles.
I feel like the people running Android now are much more humorless than the people who were running it like 5 or 10 years ago. So I feel like
well, you say
they'll look for an opportunity to make it less fun.
You say,
like, look at all the Android statues; they suck now.
They do suck, but You say
Oh, go ahead.
You say humorless, but I think the gesture nav is a pretty good joke.
Oh, I see. Har har.
Thank you.
Nice.
Okay. All right.
So
So
really
let's.
quick question, but on the topic of code names, isn't it usually announced before this time of year? Don't they
I
usually have
think
the statue out like by like at around now, if not
well,
a bit earlier?
with Oreo, they waited until their release day, if I remember right, because that was the
Yeah.
whole solar eclipse weird Oreo thing. I still don't
Yeah.
really know what that was about.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
We just don't know what they're gonna do yet. But okay. All right. Let's move on to something also very weird. The Nubia Z20. So Corbin, you wrote about this. Why is this phone weird?
Let me tell you why it's very weird. As soon as I find the link in this Google Doc, am I looking at the? Oh God, I'm on last week. I was
Good
adding
job,
to
Corbin.
last week. Thank you. Okay, so Nubia, you might not have heard of them. They used to be a subsidiary of ZTE, but they kind of spun off. I believe ZTE only owns like 40% or whatever now. But anyway, they came out with a new phone and it has two screens. So there's a regular screen on the front that's pretty much bezel-less, no camera notch, no pop-up camera or anything like that. And there's a smaller screen on the back. So that the one on the front is a 6.42-inch screen, and the one on the back is 5.1 inches. And it looks like they're using AMOLED to just selectively turn on the pixels. So like, there's some cool colors on the back, and it looks like they aren't. It's not just like a black square in the middle of the back of your phone. At least in this art, it might look different in real life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know
this
if I
kind of looks
believe
like a
these
render.
renders. Like that,
Yeah.
the blue one at the top. Like I don't believe
Yeah,
that.
it might look different, but the basic gist is that the back of the phone will function like an always on display, which is like, yeah, then you're putting your phone face down a lot.
Yeah.
And also
So
the main reason why it's on the back is they're not putting a front facing camera on this phone to get the screen fully bezel-less. So if you want to take a picture of yourself or do video calls or whatever else you use your camera for, the viewfinder's on the back of the phone, and you just use the main back cameras. So kind of like what the Zenfone 6 does, except instead of the camera flipping around, it's the screen that's duplicated on both sides.
You're just flipping your phone.
Yeah.
This is not the first Nubia phone we've seen that does this. There was one that was kind of news a couple months back. I think they had it at CES this last year. The Nubia X. So it was like the same deal. It had an OLED on the back and then like a bigger one on the front. So
Yeah.
this is similar, but it is a new phone. It's not just like a rebadged same thing. This has like it has an 855 plus in it, so it's
Yeah,
pretty
it's
power wise.
it's a pretty big beast, at least on paper, because it does have the Snapdragon 855 plus, 512 gigs of internal storage, a big old battery, up to 8 gigs of RAM. So maybe a phone for Artem. We'll see. But yeah, so it looks neat. I'd like to try it at some point. It's supposed to come out August 16th in China, and then in sometime in September it'll come to the US, UK, Canada, and the EU. So
Okay. All right. So now we have two watch things we're going to talk about real quick. We're just going to blaze through this, give our opinions, because let's face it, smartwatches are not a thing most people care about unless they're the Apple Watch. Womp womp.
What?
So new Fossil watches, Fossil Gen 5 watches. These are basically the Fossil Sport, but in nicer cases with a few more features.
yeah, so this has the latest Snapdragon chip in it. Has twice the storage that most watches have, and Spotify is pre-installed, so I guess it's for Spotify. But it has almost everything you can get out of a Wear OS watch. It has a heart rate sensor, it has Google Pay, GPS, waterproofing for up to 30 meters. It has a speaker on it, which was missing from the Fossil Sport, and some people complained about that. So there you go. There's your speaker. The main reason why this watch is kind of unique is that it finally has the extended battery mode that was promised when the Fossil Sport was originally announced. Qualcomm said it would come eventually. It takes advantage of the extra cores or extra nodes that are on the newer Wear chip. They said this should give you, let me see, extended battery mode supposedly lasts multiple days while still showing notifications and tracking heart rate. So we'll have to see how that goes in real life, how much of Wear OS is turned off when it's in that mode, but it does sound interesting.
Yeah.
And
then there's like the clock only mode that's like a month or something.
yeah, that's what was on the Fossil Sport and a couple other watches where like it just shuts off the whole Android OS and just powers on a very basic clock. But it's available in a couple different styles, just, Fossil, like they always do. They make a bunch of different styles with different bands, and all of them are $295, which is a little bit on the pricey side.
Yeah, for Wear OS when it's still Wear OS.
Yeah. But yeah.
All right. So if you're not into Wear OS and you want a new smartwatch that isn't an Apple Watch, well, maybe Samsung has what you're looking for. They announced the Watch Active 2, which it's only been, what, 5 months since the Watch Active came out? Something like that?
Yeah, wasn't it announced alongside the S10, if I remember right?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not very old. So there's already a Watch Active 2. So the big change this time is that the touch wheel is back, sort of, but instead of being a mechanical thing that spins, it's just a touch sensitive region on the edge of the display. So I mean, functionally, it's the same. You can still navigate the Tizen OS with sort of just spinning around on the edge. There's just nothing that physically moves. It comes in both 40 and 44 millimeter cases. There will also be an LTE version of this watch that apparently is made of stainless steel. The Wi-Fi version is just aluminum. Carriers will announce when and how much for the LTE version, but the 40 millimeter is $279, the 44 is $299, and they go on pre-order September 6th, and then they don't come out until the end of September. So this is pretty far in advance. I think you've got time to decide.
Yeah, and also they jacked up the price a lot. So the smaller one,
it is. Yeah, the Watch Active was pretty cheap. It was under 200, wasn't it?
It was just 200.
Was it? Okay. Yeah. So I mean, it's quite a bit more. It looks. I don't know. It looks like more rounded. This watch, like the Watch Active was flatter, I think.
So yeah, it doesn't. Well, the thing is, it doesn't really have buttons protruding. There's no, like, they are there. They actually have them, but they're almost flush with the side.
Yeah, it's still minor. I don't know. It seems crazy that they're turning up the price that much, but maybe it'll be like the Note, where it comes out, it's really expensive, and then 2 months later it goes on fire sale. But
yeah, I don't know. I feel like Samsung moves more of these watches than we think they do. I mean, like,
I'm sure they've sold a lot of them.
I see people in real life wearing Samsung watches.
Yeah,
which I can't really say for like Fossil.
I'm assuming a lot of them probably got them as like just bonuses when they bought their phones, though.
Maybe, but I mean, they are genuinely good watches, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're selling well. But yeah.
All right. So we're just gonna real quickly remind you that you can subscribe to the Android Police podcast on Twitch. That is twitch.tv/Android Police. It is free if you're an Amazon Prime member. It gives us money to help do the show and doesn't cost you anything else. So do that. Now we're going to talk about the new Shield TV, which is apparently it might be a lot smaller than we thought, like teeny tiny, like a thumb drive sort of thing, like the original Chromecast, basically.
Oh, thank you to HBar98 for subscribing. You're very nice.
We assume.
We know, because you're being very nice to us.
It's a safe bet.
Yeah, we're sure you're very nice.
So anyway, yes, NVIDIA, thanks to some details that were found inside of the latest update that they pushed out, the basically it looks like they're going to probably ship a device that the reason that it's presumed it will probably be so small is the software kind of shows that it will probably not have a USB port. So essentially the only reason that would likely happen is a small device.
Yeah.
So yay,
and then
a portable shield.
supposedly there will also be like just a revamped version of the existing box with like a slightly newer Tegra X1 processor. And I mean, it was already pretty small, like as small as you can reasonably make something like that if you're going to have it be a separate device with like ports.
Yeah, I mean,
muted.
the thing is, it's still just such a good Android TV device. It's really the only good set-top
Yeah.
box device there is.
Basically, yeah.
And funny enough, NVIDIA really has so little reason to replace it or do anything particularly that different to it. Everyone just expects a replacement because it's now a 4-year-old device and it's
Yeah.
still getting really good
It's
updates.
been 2 years since the last revision, so yeah, it's due.
Yeah. Or again, so we feel like it's due.
Yeah, I mean, NVIDIA's in just it's such a weird place because they haven't really made any appreciable changes to the Tegra X1 chip for ages now. And like that custom CPU core that they developed years ago, they're still kind of tinkering with that, but it's unlikely that'll ever show up in something else because it's just easier to use ARM reference cores. But I mean, they haven't rolled out a new version of the X1 that has like newer designs. It's still like 4 years, 5 years old now.
Well, Nintendo just announced new Switches that have a slightly tweaked version of it, but as far as I know, there's not a performance difference. It's just like a die shrink for better battery, which wouldn't really matter in this case.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, they're probably just making the new version of the Tegra X1 for everything now because it's easier to do that. Doesn't matter if it has better battery life.
Yeah.
They just put an RTX 2080 in it and call it a day.
Yeah, I would buy that. All right. So then we've just got one other thing that I don't even know if we need to talk about. I don't have anything to say about this, but anybody else?
Well, so short version is Xiaomi and Samsung have apparently worked together on a 108 megapixel camera sensor. Actually, it's a 108 and a 64. They've got both of them. The 64 is headed for some Xiaomi phone. I forget which one now. But yeah, so great. I have a cat howling in the background.
Oh,
all of us have to have animals howling someday. But yeah, so anyway, this is just a ridiculously large not large, but a ridiculously high number of pixels on a sensor. The 64, of course, in both of these cases, they're obviously going to be binned down. So basically they'll be taking, for every 4 pixels, you're going to get one that actually makes it to the final file. So in the case of the 64, that turns into a 16 megapixel image, and in the case of the 108 megapixel sensor, it will turn into somewhere around a 27 megapixel image. What's really interesting to me about that is most people will tell you mid 20s is kind of the butter zone for cameras, because it gives you an image large enough that you can crop it down really significantly without losing like a ton of detail. But it's not so big that the images are like way, way too big for you to actually like work with or carry around a decent number. So I think that could actually be a pretty big deal.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's hard to get excited about this because over the past couple years, the megapixel count really doesn't mean much anymore. It's all about how your camera processing is, because we've seen like OnePlus and other companies where they've made phones with a ridiculous sensor on them, but the photos still look terrible when they come out of processing.
Well, and a big part of that too is still the physical limitations. I mean, this is still a smartphone camera using a thin little smartphone lens, or well, stacked lenses is what they always show off in those big exploded views. But yeah, they've got so little actually in terms of space. The physics just limit what they can actually do with this. So, I mean, it's definitely still limited in real photo quality, but at least there is room to improve just by stacking more pixels.
I mean, let's. I'll care when I see this in a Pixel phone, and Google has 103 or 108 megapixels of data to work with. That'd be great. Otherwise, like whatever, I don't care.
Well, again, this is Samsung and Xiaomi, so best bet this is never going to make it to a Pixel phone.
Yeah.
You're
All
gonna,
right.
you're gonna
You know.
have the best AR face filters ever created.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
both of these companies are competent with the cameras, and that's kind of as far as I would go.
Yeah. I think everyone's still probably going to be buying from Sony for the most part.
Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe Samsung will be a little bit more amiable with this one.
All right, so I think that's all we've got this week, right? Anybody have something else they want to complain about? No.
No,
All right then.
not right now.
Not right now. Okay, we think about it. We can go live later if you
Okay.
come back if you think of anything. All right,
Cody's cat's really bothered though. I think,
yeah, we
I think
we
when they
gotta
come on-
get out of here because of the cat. So yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. Just one more reminder: you can subscribe to the show on twitch.tv/Android Police. Helps us keep doing the show, which we usually like doing. You're all very nice people, so keep subscribing, and we'll see you next time.
Good night, everybody.